I played all 5 mainline Armored Core games in 72 hours. Why? Because it sounded cool? But more importantly, so that you don't have to. With Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon coming out in approximately 71 hours. Oh god, what have I done? Did you know FromSoft had a series before Dark Souls and Elden Ring? And did you know that there are 15 games in that series? Yeah, I didn't either. It's called Armored Core, and it's not for the faint of heart. Before we begin, let's set up some ground rules. I'm only playing Armored Core 1 through 5. Now, I realize there are 15 games in total in the series, and hardcore fans are screaming at me now because, from my understanding, those sequel and side games are some of the best in the series. The reason I'm sticking to 5 games is because I don't hate myself. Yet. Those games will have to come later. The reason I'm not veering from the mainline releases is because there hasn't been a release in the series in a decade. And normally, I just pick up the new one because they'll certainly make it accessible to the masses who likely haven't played the rest of the series, right? But that pesky little 6 in the title is going to piss me off, is going to really bother me. It doesn't sit right with me. It's judging me. It's saying, bro, you have no idea what you're getting into. You're a noob. I hate you. You'll never make it through these 5 games. We're running out of time. Let's begin by talking about Armored Core 1, shall we? The story of Armored Core 1 is one of post-apocalyptic conflict. The Great Destruction was a war that did what the name implies. It forced survivors underground to live for half a decade. In this time, 2 main corporations came to power. I like to think this would be Amazon and Google. And the race to political and economical domination begins. So Jeff Bezos hires a merc that pilots their own Armored Core vehicle to take out enemy Armored Cores and points of interest that Google might want. You are the pilot, and you are part of an elite group called Ravens, highly skilled Armored Core pilots for hire. Right off the bat, I'm actually impressed with how it looks. I expected polygons, but this is actually not bad, especially for gamers who booted this up in the late 90s. It sort of feels like some of these modern indie games that intentionally use bad polygon graphics as an aesthetic. As for controls, yeah. Keep in mind the PS1 used the D-pad for movement, and strafing came down to using the shoulder buttons. This isn't the worst thing to deal with in Armored Core, but it definitely feels clunky by today's standards. The real issue is in the vertical camera. Looking up and down is bound to the L2 and R2 buttons? Yikes is the only thing that comes to mind. I never once got used to this, and I can honestly see this being a real dividing line for players trying to revisit this entry. That said, boosting around and entering combat with other mechs is really satisfying, and I just know players in 1998 were having their minds blown at this type of freeform movement and gunplay. Especially if you were an Evangelion degenerate. A huge component of this game that shouldn't be overlooked is the sheer amount of customization they give the player. You can fully deck out your mech with different parts and weapons to drastically change stats and properties. I got really lost in this system. It's a real pimp my ride treatment, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could install an N64 in the back of the Armored Core's head. This is, of course, a staple of the series, but it really makes you feel like you're the pilot of this behemoth. The OST is noticeably dank. The track Shape Memory Alloys plays in the menu when shopping and customizing, and it's an absolute bop. The rest of the soundtrack is theme-appropriate, chill drum and bass. What's not to love when committing mass murder in a metal Godzilla suit? Moving on to Gen 2 in the series and a console generation jump as well. Armored Core 2 takes place 67 years after the 3rd game in the series, Master of Arena. And Zeomatrix, one of those massive corporations I was talking about earlier, finds out there was a research plan to be conducted on Mars. So, essentially, Elon Musk enters the fray and starts terraforming Mars to put Zeomatrix in control of the planet. I'm only half kidding about these following real events. This is getting a little too prophetic for me. Okay, Armored Core 2, PS2 should be much better controls than the first. Wait, what? I'd like to publicly shame the person who chose this control scheme. You have 2 analog sticks now. Use them. What the f***? What were they thinking? No one will use those dumb things. It'll be a fad. Players are used to the controls from the first game. Come on, man. I hate that shoulder button looking up and down thing. It's like riding the world's most indecisive roller coaster. Visuals, on the other hand, are looking good. The cutscenes are really impressive, even for the PS2, and the in-game graphics are a clear step up from the PlayStation, which sorta helps the sins of the control scheme, but not really. I still feel confined in this mech suit, but at least I'm doing it in style. Something I started to notice between the two games that slipped by me for a while was the fact that this game makes you pay taxes. At the end of each mission, you are rewarded with credits that you can use in the shop to buy parts and gear. However, you also have to pay for the repair costs of your armored core and the ammunition that you used in the level. Small business simulator much? This all makes sense with the story, and it certainly adds a layer of immersion, but it also kind of forces you to play quite conservatively, at least in the early game. Alright, Armored Core 3, we're still living on the PS2, and that's just 2 years after Armored Core 2 came out. They really got after it. The first thing I notice about this game is that the music is not as good. At least that opening track. I'm not vibing with those vocals, but maybe it gets better. The other thing that all the games have in common are the absolutely lit battle scenes in the intros. They're reason enough to play the games, and they got me hype every time. The one in 3 was especially epic because it was quite literally a street fight. Get him, Tommy. Yeah, get him. After watching that, I couldn't wait to see what the plot would be in this game because it's actually a reboot of the series. Let's go. Okay, they're trolling me. The plot of the third game is so relevant in 2023 that I'm convinced FromSoft is calling the shots on a global scale. Basically, the controller is this global AI that has taken over and allows for everyone to live uninspired, easy lives. Let's just refer to the controller as ChatGPT from here on out. So, ChatGPT is just vibing, everything's going as it pleases, but then the corporations are back. Google, Amazon, and SpaceX, and they want a slice of the pie.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Once the game plunged me into the staple Raven tutorial mission, I literally started crying. The right joystick does nothing still. This simply cannot be. ChatGPT is looking at me now laughing because this was all part of the plan. I was never supposed to have dual analog controls of these games. It's all one big sick joke to expose my human flaws. Why, God? Why am I playing these? Oh snap, this is kind of dope. Not sure what it is, but the flow of this game really feels solid. Like they finally got the groove down in terms of enemy density and level design. Not that the first games were bad in this regard, but Armored Core 3 feels like a progressive experience as you continue through each mission, rather than a never-ending task list. The arena is also a blast in this game. I would have loved to play this with a friend using local multiplayer, because you get to use your own Armored Core, like your custom Armored Cores. That's very cool. In the end, you find out that ChatGPT has been controlling the factions all along. Oh no! Meaning your decisions would still lead to the AI. You kill ChatGPT, which opens up the hatch for access to the surface in who knows how long. Pretty sick ending, to be honest. Armored Core 4. Okay, big jump from PS2 to PS3. Let's go. Armored Core 4 is on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and physical is pretty much your only option when revisiting these games. They did not receive digital releases, unfortunately. The story of Armored Core 4 can wait because we have dual analog controls, baby! Let's go! Finally, these bozos woke up to the future in 2007. A little late to the party, but I'm not gonna complain, and man does this feel so much better. I actually feel like I'm the pilot and can easily see above me now. Thank you, FromSoft. Wait a sec. Another reboot? Okay, this series is lit. But it's okay because we have Papa Miyazaki as the director. Pretty huge news for the series because this was Hidetaka Miyazaki's directorial debut, who is now the president of FromSoft and served as game director for your favorite Soulsborne games and, most recently, the critically acclaimed Elden Ring.
Thank you, everybody.
What a giga-chad. With this being the second reboot, we're bound to go into vastly different direction with the narrative. Oh. I guess don't fix what ain't broken? That works here, right? In the game's defense, Miyazaki took the plot into much richer territory compared to the fairly flat stories in the previous games. Hang on to your metal butts with this one. There are now 6 corporations that forced the world into a post-apocalyptic corporate quote-unquote peace. So now we have Google, Amazon, SpaceX, Apple, Meta, and Netflix. Microsoft. The facade of peace is across the nations, but the majority of people are lacking. Either way, another war between the corporations breaks out because of a resource called Kojima Tech. I swear to you, I'm not making that part up. So, Kojima is now the source of how civilizations create nexts, which are basically the new Armored Core units. Oh, and we're no longer Ravens, we're now Lynx. There was some odd stalling at the end of certain missions where it wasn't clear if I beat it or not. You've got the normal handlers on comms communicating to you, but sometimes they just be saying whatever they want. As always, I'm more of a fan of the defeat all enemy missions, but the tower defense missions add some flair here. I'm a fan, and again, I just gotta point out that the new control scheme is fantastic. I did struggle to get the hang of the weapon switching system with the shoulder buttons. I often would just go commando and spam whatever seemed to work, but further playing would likely reveal some real strategy to choosing and using the different weapon types. Armored Core 5, we're almost there. One last game. We can do this. We are Lynx after all. Armored Core 5 takes place in one of the last livable areas in the world after mass pollution has taken over the landscape. The city is run by this dude who went farther into the rad zone than anyone and brought back technology that helped him take control. He then decides to send part of the population, you guessed it, underground to help with overcrowding. This of course causes a rebellion, so Father, the dude's name is Father, sets up a corporation to handle the resistance. That's where you come in with your Armored Core and yada yada yada. This series is kind of like Zelda where they just tell the same story every time but different. It's great. Gameplay of 5 felt pretty good, but I will say the target zone and heads-up display in this game is a bit much. It's very intrusive, probably because I had just played 4, and that game doesn't have much of 1 at all. It definitely adds to that level of immersion to see this like Armored Core targeting system and whatnot, but the practicality of it, it's just not my favorite. And these bozos changed the controls again. Boost is now X again, but it stays toggled until you manually turn it off with left bumper? What? Feels like an unnecessary change, and I'm hoping 6 takes a more modern, straightforward approach when it comes to button mapping. We'll see. There's a new feature in this game called Scanning Mode, which is basically detective mode from the Arkham games that will reveal objectives, secrets, and suggested pathing. I don't hate it, but I definitely kept forgetting to toggle it off. There's a lot going on with this game, and add one more thing to juggle and I just get lost. There's also a really cool online 5v5 mode where one of the players on the team is like calling the shots and directing everybody like a commander. The developers even recommended holding the controller a certain way for this. They called it Legendary Armored Core Grip Extreme X. Unfortunately, the servers are now defunct, so that's dead. And with that, I'm done. I'm finally free from researching and playing these complex games. An entirely new to me FromSoft franchise full of corporations and corporations. Not having a release in a decade speaks to FromSoft's focus on Dark Souls at the time and over the last 10 years, and that was probably a good move because Dark Souls has defined a damn genre and was highly successful for that company. Elden Ring was a cultural hit, and as a longtime Dark Souls fan, I loved watching that unfold. So I'm hoping fans of Elden Ring can translate into Fires of Rubicon when it comes out. And who knew Armored Core would rival Dark Souls in terms of approachability? But none of that matters now. I see the light. I see it. It's beautiful. It's the end. It's getting brighter. Wait, no, that's fire. No, please. Why? No.